David Bromstad, the legendary My Lottery host. Dream Home is renowned for his distinctive designs, unique flair, and lively spirit. What if we told you, however, that beneath the happiness and amazing style is a tale of suffering, treachery, and conflicts that almost broke him? Why was David embarrassed in front of the public? Of hundreds of classmates? What terrible incidents almost resulted in his permanent removal from television? Furthermore, what did supporters dread the worst after a recent health scare? We will tell the untold tale in this video. Underlying David's dazzling exterior, from the personal struggles to the trauma he endured as a child, and legal actions that plagued his ascent to popularity. This is not merely a designer's story, it's about survival, fortitude, and atonement. The bullying that caused him to break. Prior to becoming the colorful, vivacious TV personality that America loves, David, growing up in the small, traditional community of Hgtv, Minnesota, Bromstad was a quiet boy. Born from a traditional Scandinavian-American household, David's environment was one of strict expectations, unwritten guidelines, and a low threshold for deviation. Not typical. David was noticeable from a young age. Drawing was his passion. He was creative, communicative, and emotionally receptive, qualities that were not commended in the society he was grown up in. They turned him into a target instead. The taunting had progressed by high school into something far more harmful. During one of the most trying times in his life, David remembered how he was humiliated by more than 600 of his classmates in one planned incident. Within the school, the entire student body rose and made lewd gestures at him in the cafeteria during the day, isolating him, laughing, and making fun of him. Worse yet, the institution that is supposed to safeguard students, principal, took part, whether enmeshed in the throng or oblivious to the more profound suffering his actions caused. His involvement stung. It was more than simply bullying for David. The betrayal was made public. David first used the term daylight hell in an interview with Out magazine in 2008 to characterize that moment, a cruel and alienating encounter that turned his life around when he was younger. The worst thing about him was that after that day, nothing felt secure. The corridors were battlegrounds rather than areas of travel. But the cafeteria had changed from being a conflict zone lunchroom. And instead of serving as guardians, the grown-ups turned into participants at worst, onlookers at best. No educators stepped in. No counselor was consulted. David went off to face the ordeal by himself. In the ensuing months, David started a slow retreat. He became more reserved and self-reflective. Although the majority, David did little more than try to get by from day to day while teenagers looked for camaraderie and identity. On the inside, he carried a great load of humiliation while concealing a developing storm of despair and anxiety. Later on, he realized that a significant portion of the fight had resulted from emotional suffering he had not yet learned to cope with during that decade of his 20s. Unbeknownst to him, however, something extraordinary emerged from the tumult. David pivoted toward art as a lifeline rather than just a diversion. He drew. He did some painting. He constructed realms, devoid of judgment, and fully textured in color and possibilities. Color turned into a strategy for emotional survival. Each vivid hue applied to the canvas became a response to the weight of his soul. Art was an escape back then, not a means of expression. What proved particularly potent was the subsequent evolution of these primitive survival strategies into the cornerstone of his profession, the bold, vivid colors that viewers today identify with. Hgtv designs by David? Those were imagined during those intimate, agonizing times when color became his only haven. His approach to design wasn't just cheerful, it was almost defiant, of quiet protest against the gloom of his history. However, it wasn't until much later that the public began to discuss. These early injuries were discovered. Fans saw nothing but the happy designer for years. Filled each room he entered with light. However, the person behind that smile had defended his identity long before he was ever the target of the cameras. David's narrative strikes a chord because his happiness was an achievement rather than a natural gift. He engaged in combat for this brightness that he now cherishes so much. Cruelty did not turn into a turning point but instead, it changed him. And that change was only the first step. And life took a nasty turn right after he landed his ideal job. The Disney dream that ended after surviving his adolescent's cruel isolation. Years later, David Bromstad pursued a desire he had harbored since he was a young boy. Employed by Disney. For a young man who had always turned to storytelling and painting for solace, becoming a Disney animator was salvation, not just a professional aspiration. He became a student at the Ringling. Sarasota, Florida's College of Art and Design is renowned for educating students to collaborate with Disney. And there, he flourished. In an environment that at last honored originality. Instead of being mocked, David flourished. Following graduation, David was hired for the position that had felt like a dream at one point. He began working at Disney's renowned animation division, eventually rising to a portion of a planet that millions of people can only ever appreciate from a distance. Surrounded by outstanding, he put his all into the work, creatives. It was confirming. It was thrilling. Additionally, for the first time, David thought he was at the right place. The shadowy darkness of high. He was done with school. His fantasy was coming true. However, dreams, particularly in creative industries, may be delicate. Early in the 2000s, the world of animation saw a significant change. Conventional animation created by hand, once computer-generated imagery, CGI, was taking the role of Disney's industry standard. The studio experienced a comprehensive restructuring. There were numerous layoffs and budget cuts, and David's no department was exempt. He lost his ideal job almost immediately. The position for which he had trained, emotionally clung to and sacrificed for was no longer there. This was more than just a setback in the workplace. It was a really intimate one. The job had meant all David had worked so hard to achieve. Recognition, acceptance, and a feeling of community were all taken away, leaving us square. 1. No map. No salary. Just inquiries. Now what? Is that it? Was he too good too soon? David drifted aimlessly for a while. His self-esteem took yet another hit. For him, this was a period of intense emotion. It felt as though his very foundation gave way right after he believed he had established a firm footing. Without a job in animation, the bills became a tremendous burden. Once more, David needed to locate a different source of income. His lifelong passion for hues and patterns inspired him to pursue a career in interior design. It wasn't a glamorous job. Initially, he worked on little projects primarily developing children's rooms, frequently without success. Behind him, there was no brand. There were no customers competing for his services. But he persisted. Another task in a lengthy chain was painting a mural or redesigning a space. Numerous occupations that prepared him for the next one. Disney's glamorous title was eroding, but resilience, something far more potent, started to surface. From this really humble start, David started to develop a bold, expressive, and uniquely his style over time. This was it. When he was being bullied as a child, he employed artistic language, which was now being supplied through the mill of actual residences. For him, color was far more than just ornamentation. It was therapeutic. Feeling as well as purpose. The customers began to pay attention. News of mouth got the news out. A door suddenly opened just when David thought he would be permanently trapped in a creative limbo. In 2006, a friend convinced him to try out for a brand new Hgtv reality show called Design Star. The exhibition was looking for celebrities as well as designers, people who could make a space in addition to a lens. David was hurt after leaving and went into the audition with low expectations. Disney. But magic happened when he appeared on camera. His friendliness, sense of humor, and extremely creative designs stood out right away. In addition to competing, he won. Using a fresh platform, an audience, and a fresh start at stake. David was unaware at the time that losing the Disney position had been replaced by something far more than a job, more human. The animator, who had long aimed to bring characters to life, was now giving actual people hope by establishing areas where they can recover and flourish. He recovered with wealth and notoriety, but behind the camera, a sour betrayal was about to happen. The lawsuit that damaged his image. By 2015, millions of Hgtv watchers have grown accustomed to seeing David Bromstad. He personified the fantasy with his charisma, daring designs, and contagious smile. Behind My Lottery Dream Home, a man who assisted people in creating the lives of their dreams. However, behind the dazzling TV persona, a storm was subtly building, and it posed a threat when it eventually broke to destroy all he had put so much effort into creating. Fans were shocked by the headlines. David Bromstad was being sued by Jeffrey Glasgow, his former business collaborator and partner, in a civil lawsuit. Glasgow's lawsuit, filed in Florida State Court, accused David of betraying her on several levels, including romantic and monetary. The accusations weren't ambiguous or insignificant. They were hurtful, lurid, and intensely personal. According to Glasgow, their long-term partnership had operated like a de facto union, and that David had misused their pooled assets, betraying their confidence. As stated by that funds had been wasted on illegal substances and escorts, such as what Glasgow characterized the use of male escorts and wild hookup parties. He created a painting of extravagance and carelessness that sharply contrasted with David's impeccable public persona. Fans were in disbelief. Could it be that the friendly, upbeat designer on TV was concealing such mayhem in the background? Was David Bromstad indeed here? For most celebrities, a lawsuit of this kind would usually result in a rush of PR efforts, such as interviews, statements, and damage management, but David took the opposite approach. He became silent to accomplish it. No news conference. No justification of social media. He declined to engage in a public verbal sparring match and let the judicial proceedings unfold. For many onlookers, this silence was just as perplexing as the case itself, but in retrospect, it might have been his most honorable and calculated action. For a number of months, the case was sold their wares through the legal system. Glasgow's arguments were heard by the court, which acknowledged the evidence or lack thereof, and rendered a definitive decision in April 2016. It disregarded the case in its entirety. Glasgow's accusations against David were shown to be unfounded, and discovered to be devoid of convincing proof. Furthermore, the aforementioned court mandated Glasgow to cover David's legal costs as a result of what was deemed to be misuse of the judicial system. David's attorneys finally broke a lengthy quiet with their statement, shocking accusations imposed by a desperate individual. The court determined that the allegations were untrue and sanctioned the lawsuit for attempting to humiliate Mr. Bromstad. Nevertheless, David would always be plagued by the scandal stain. Long after the legal action had started, supporters quarreled. The tabloids were furious. Chit-chat rooms exchanged messages and so on. Opinion had become firmly skewed by the time David prevailed in his legal battle. But David remained largely silent in the months that followed. The sole remark was a brief yet insightful statement shared on Instagram that read, "I have discovered that sometimes the most effective thing you can do is to remain silent." He only ever mentioned the entire legal mess in public at that point. For David, the route moving on was more about living honorably and gracefully than it was about protecting himself. On the side, he severs all connections with Glasgow. There was a romantic relationship and professional in every way possible. Although the lawsuit might not have been accurate, it obviously injured. Not because of the charges made by someone he genuinely trusted. The public attention paled in comparison to this more agonizing betrayal. However, David made the decision to pick himself and continue, just as he had in previous instances. Despite his suffering, he grinned and carried on with his work. He demonstrated to both new and returning followers why suffering doesn't determine who you are, how you react to it does. However, despite escaping a legal ambush, this time, grief struck closer to home, but it was far from done. Family emergency. As things were starting to calm down after the midst of a court battle, David Bromstad was experiencing an even more intimate crisis, one that there was nothing a courtroom or lawsuit could prepare him for. Within a little more than a year, he had to face two horrifying experiences that would change his priorities, broaden his viewpoint, and remind him of life's brittleness and unpredictability. The initial blow was delivered early. 2015. Greg Gerard, David's close buddy, experienced an unexpected and terrible hemorrhaging stroke. It was startling, unexpected, and potentially fatal. Greg was healthy for a while and vibrant. After that, he was unconscious and struggling to stay alive in a hospital bed. David made no hesitation. He hurried over to join his pal and soon became one of Greg's most outspoken supporters in the initial stages of rehabilitation. He started an effort to raise money, to assist in paying for medical bills, posting updates and heartfelt pleas on social media. Everything. In one post, he said, "A day of physical therapy is a step closer," and his words resonated with thousands of people following the trip. The experience was pretty sobering, as David was renowned for assisting others in realizing their ideal homes. He was now seeing a significant someone in his life loses even the capacity to carry out basic activities. The difference was substantial. He discussed the psychological toll, the powerlessness that comes with witnessing someone else's suffering, and the joyous occasions of minor triumphs, like Greg's first opening his eyes or gave a nurse a response. He appeared to be settling into a life at that moment. Tragedy struck again, dictated by crises. In January 2016, a Facebook post stated that the biological father was critically ill and had been rushed to the hospital. His heart was failing severely, with a resting heart rate of about 136 beats per minute and a risky rhythm. The physicians were concerned that he would suffer a seizure, if not worse. David was there once more. He took time off sets and canceled appointments. Furthermore, at that, he was only a son at the time, not a famous person or a designer. Unfortunately, he had hope that his only options were to wait and pray. He was direct in his post. His heart valves are broken. His heartbeat is erratic. They are keeping a close eye on him to avoid seizures and stroke. It was a really exposed moment that gave supporters a glimpse of the truth, of the man behind the vibrant moments on TVs and the exquisitely chosen Instagram pictures. Because these two crises were so near to one another, David had to think carefully. He started to reflect regarding the necessity to be grounded, the relative importance of public accomplishment, and career velocity. On the other hand, he was assisting lottery winners in purchasing million-dollar properties. Sustaining life became his reality. He became divided by that contrast. He would no longer define success in the same manner. For him, success was no longer determined by how many gigs he performed or how many fans he attracted. It was crucial to be present for others, for times, for the unpredictable twists and turns of life. Most likely, he wouldn't have realized that. At that time, he had vanished. He continued to light up and smile gorgeously on screen. However, in reality, David blocked out everything unimportant in his life. Instead of a redo, he got a health examination. At the award shows, the carpet rolled out. He preferred to pray silently in advance of interviews, and even upon his subsequent viewing, he noticed a distinct presence of silent strength that had previously been lacking in him. And as he started to reassemble his fans believed that he was suffering from a serious ailment. The oxygen tube panicked. David Bromstad supporters woke up in May 2025 to a startling Instagram sight. The perpetually happy host of My Lottery Dream Home was there, sitting comfortably in a chair, although with an oxygen tube inserted in their nose. No caption, no background. Simply seeing David with transparent plastic tubing up his nose, a medical procedure that most people connect to medical facilities, sickness, or worse. Social media was in flames in a matter of hours. Worried, His admirers poured queries and anxieties into his direct messages and comment sections. "Are you all right, David? What's happening? What's up your nose with a cannula?" The picture touched a nerve. For a known as a vibrant, vivacious, and upbeat public figure, this unexpected glance into what appeared to a major health problem struck hard. It wasn't David the Prince's polished, Hgtv friendly. The public was accustomed to it being unvarnished and unclear. There was a lot of conjecture. Is he sick? Was there a cover-up of some sort? Had he been involved in a lengthy covert struggle with a disease all along? The supporters were quite worried, and given that, they assumed the worst since David had a history of managing crises in a calm manner, which is a widely held belief. As a result, the truth was undoubtedly considerably different from what was believed when it was revealed the very next day. David emphasized in the follow-up post that he hadn't been ill at all, saying, "During hyperbaric oxygen therapy, a health and wellness procedure, the oxygen tube was utilized. Therapy using a pressurized chamber with pure oxygen. It is believed to promote healing, reduce inflammation, encourage overall detoxification, and heal injuries. It might now be taken into fashionable among celebrities and professional athletes." He explained that it was a component of his self-care routine. Not ill, super healthy and thriving, this is just one more strategy one employ to maintain equilibrium. And invigorated. "Don't worry, everyone. The spectator's comfort comes immediately, yet the moment remains with a deeper meaning, a glimpse of David's growing path to wellness. Stealthily followed. There is more to that trip than just performance or flair. Behind the cause, David had long had a strong interest in both mental and physical wellness. The image, its reverberation might have revealed something far more profound than just a tube. A man who has experienced emotional distress, legal disputes, public humiliation, and near-family crises. Upheaval, and came out on the other side with fresh discipline. It wasn't enough to live for entertainment. Others, but, to put it another way, living to keep his own peace. Following his post about his oxygen tube, David began talking more candidly about wellness in the months that followed. More frequently, energy healing, mindful eating, sleep patterns, and breathwork. He would not typically delve into depth, but he decided to provide brief glimpses of a life that was centered on self-awareness, intention, and recuperation. Recovery wasn't limited to the body either. In a delicate, David demonstrated that finding recovery required relearning to trust, both in his own body and in other people surrounding him, and have faith that his weakness won't be exploited. For a man who had previously survived a public courtroom battle full of harsh words and orchestrated bullying at school, charges that confidence had been gained. Many were quite aback by how fearless he now appeared to communicate imperfect moments. Once a person who exuded glitzy, television-friendly happiness, David had started incorporating his true self, the aspect of him that became overwhelmed, who required. People used oxygen to rejuvenate, spending peaceful mornings by themselves, caring for plants and taking deep breaths. Silently, away from the spotlight, David was creating something more. A completely new existence, more enduring than celebrity. Healing, rebirth, and creative liberty. Fans' current perception of David Bromstad on social media and television is not solely the outcome of. It's the result of survival, not of celebrity or fashion. After dealing with personal tragedy for years, public, David silently entered a new period amid scrutiny and emotional turmoil. One that is characterized by clarity, depth of feeling, and total artistic freedom. This change didn't happen all at once. Following legal actions, medical emergencies, and personal losses, David gradually withdrew from the spotlight, not going away, but stepping back just enough to take a moment to think, breathe, and adjust. Once teeming with high-end production sets and press conferences, social media became a more relaxed and genuine setting. His posts changed from being promotional to becoming intimate. A stroll in his garden. An untidy shirt smeared with paint during an artistic endeavor. A morning. Coffee on the porch without a script or filter. One pivotal moment occurred when a mountain, in a literal sense, David sent a picture of Rina Bringen in Norway at the beginning of 2023, looking sweaty and grinning, following a strenuous hike. "I've been through a lot over the past few years," the caption said. "Years. I'll talk about it when I'm ready, but for now, it feels amazing to be completely moment and leading the life I was destined to lead." The subtle yet frank remarks highlighted a rebirth of the artist as well as of the man. He started to view every aspect of his existence as an opportunity to demonstrate for self-expression, not for show. In the winter, in his ideal home, the Park, Florida home he created from the ground up was bursting with hues, textures, and individual background. No generic choices were made, each artwork, pattern, and coat of paint on. The story was told by the walls. Winning prizes is not about the design. It is the healing design. It's a healing retreat as well as a live-in den, where David might spend his morning meditation, and during twilight, he cooks dinner with his lover, Nicholas Martin, and leaves when the world. The noise outside became unbearable. According to reports, David has stated in interviews that this is a physical manifestation of everything I've battled to preserve, including my peace, my creativity, and my own identity. In fashion, he followed suit. David was well known for his audacity, and his clothes stretched further along the eclecticism spectrum, fearlessness in expression, glitter and animal prints. Anything goes, including painted boots and jackets. To everyone else, it could appear excessive. Flamboyance. It's armor to David. It's rebellion and art. Each ensemble makes a statement. I made it through. I remain here. I also won't dim. Additionally, he signed his own personal brand in recent years, introducing a line of home decor with Grandin Road and beginning to manufacture prints that showcase his largely unique design ethos, as well as various external. David transitions from being a media star to becoming an entrepreneur. His holdings aren't. They are daring, frequently fanciful, and distinctly personal, making them ideal for mass-market trends. He once said, "I don't want to decorate houses," in an Hgtv profile. "I desire to evoke a feeling in individuals as soon as they enter a space. I want the design to remind individuals who they are or aspire to be." In addition to business, he has placed a high priority on to mentorship and the community. David, the first openly gay broadcaster on Hgtv, was never one to make his sexuality more visible, but he believes more than ever that it is his accountability as a silent guide. He has made multiple appearances in Out magazine's prestigious Out 100 list, more for just being himself than for making big political gestures, an industry that frequently favors role-playing. Additionally, as his personal development progressed, the most influential chapter of his career was about to begin. A heritage greater than design. The journey of David Bromstad began with cartoons and crayons and ended with luxury, national renown and real estate, but eventually his reputation developed into something far more expansive than design. What started off as an idea to embellish kids' rooms or animated Disney figures developed into a far more individualized goal, to live and led with bravery, color, and sincerity. After being in the public eye for almost 20 years, the number of houses that David has decorated or the number of viewers do not determine his legacy. Every week, watch My Lottery Dream Home. It concerns the people he has impacted. He has dispelled preconceptions and granted individuals the freedom to be who they are, brightly, unabashedly, and loudly. It's simple to consider David to be the helpful one. People use their lotto wins to purchase their ideal homes. The headline role is that. However, behind that, there is a man who completely reconstructed his own dream home, not simply the actual one in Florida, but the one inside that he now peacefully calls home. He's not hiding behind his happy exterior. It's a meticulously constructed product of every betrayal, grief, and hard-won lesson. His current demeanor on TV, friendly, lively, and playful, isn't merely character. It is an example of resilience. Every happy giggle, every outburst in response to a vibrant backsplash stems from years of deciding to stay alive even when it didn't. Be there for him. David's compelling appeal stems from his emotional sincerity. Viewers, they trust his heart in addition to admiring his talent. Additionally, many LGBTQ+ people who grew up in the absence of representation, David evolved from a host to a symbol. Not due to the fact that since he never concealed it, his identity is the focal point of his brand. He was successful in a field that has always favored its stars to be well-groomed, discreet, and agreeable. He didn't follow the rules. He thrived by embodying the complete opposite, vivacious, flamboyant, and distinctly himself. Additionally, his impact goes well beyond television. Through charitable work, public speaking, and David has developed into a sort of unintentional life counselor thanks to his open social media presence, someone who exemplifies how to gracefully rise from the bottom. He has been candid about treatment, depression, rebirth, as well as the necessity of self-care in the entertainment sector. He is not a preacher. Health. He lives it. Additionally, his words have weight because he has experienced the difficult things personally. Wait. Fans trust him in addition to admiring him. Additionally, in May, he shared a new Instagram story. Fans were concerned that 2025, when he was seen wearing a nasal oxygen tube, might indicate a medical emergency. The speculation was intense and quick. Was he all right? Had something occurred? In a day, David confronted the fear honestly rather than through denial or public relations manipulation. "I'm in excellent health and flourishing," he said, clarifying that it was merely a component of hyperbaric oxygen treatment. What could have evolved from a time of widespread anxiety into a reminder that healing isn't always evident, and sometimes maintaining one's health requires using unorthodox measures. He wasn't hiding. He was just ahead of the curve, something. Indeed, a lot of athletes and health professionals swear by this treatment for performance and recuperation. It just so happened that David brought it up in the mainstream with a single, surprising selfie. Which aspect of David's trip most affected you? Most difficult? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to like, subscribe, and share. Share this tale with everyone who needs a reminder that suffering may lead to beauty, and darkness can give birth to brightness. Select the following video that appears on your screen. Thank you for viewing.